Hello, and welcome to the Kathleen Spracklin podcast. I'm a woman on a mission to assemble a cadre of writers, thinkers, and teachers who are transforming the world one character at a time. And it all starts with one thing, a deep understanding of human motivation, why people do what they do, and the forces that drive them. This is episode number 15, Cards from my Antinet. The last 2 days, I presented reflections on a section of reading in the book Character Traits and Virtues by Peterson and Seligman. And the interesting card, the first day, was regarding a controversy between two different branches of psychology, one of whom claimed that in order to have the good life, the important factor was character traits and virtues. The other side argued that no, it was external situations that were the driving factor, and that character traits and virtues had very little power in that situation. And then the following night, I brought in a third way of looking at things, the 3 circles: vitality, relationships, and value. Well, I had a question from one of my viewers who was interested in my earliest podcast when I talked about my Antinet Zettelkasten and how my information interacted with cards that were already there and contributed new cards to my notebox. So I thought, since this was a particularly good example of that, I thought I would review these last 2 days and go over the process all in one moment where I'm not so much explaining the ideas as explaining the methods and how it interacts with my Zettelkasten. So here goes. The first day, as I was reading Peterson and Seligman, I came upon a thought that I thought was quite interesting, which was that debate that we talked about, situations, character traits. It impacted me quite greatly, so much so that I felt compelled to write something about the idea by itself. That often happens. I will have either a quote or a paraphrase from the book I'm reading, and then how does that make me feel? How do I react to that information? In this case, my reaction was whether or not the situational approach had the more power. I found it very, very troubling, and I railed against it because to me it seems to discard the importance of the individual. And as a fiction writer, my characters are all important to me. So I made that remark, and it became a part of the presentation in episode number 13 2 days ago. Well, the normal process continues. So, as a part of the process of filing this card that I just created, I'm going to give it a hashtag value. In this case, it was the good life. Which of those 2 factors contributes more to a good life? Well, now that I have my key words, the next thing I need to do, if I'm to file the card into my Antinet Zettelkasten, I need to consult my index. My index is right over here in this box. Don't know if it shows up. Just barely. And I would look up the word good life. And guess what? I found a card with the same hashtag. That card keyed up with an existing card in my Antinet Zettelkasten, which talked about the 3 circles, which I got from Momentum Learning, the work of Stephanie Roy and Ken Caputo. So that to me was a rather interesting contrast in the 2 approaches, and so much so that I made it the subject of episode number 14, where I presented a diagram showing an image that reflected each of the three, especially the three circles. And I explained how the three circles, in my opinion, presented, on the one hand, a much simpler approach to the question of having a good life, but perhaps not as useful to the fiction writer because it is very, very subjective. You rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 on each of the three factors, and those would be vitality, relationships, and value, the value that you give to society. And you multiply those three numbers together and you want to maximize your score. So it's easy to think about, and everyone's accustomed to the concept of this 1 to 10 scale. So it's something that you can do for yourself as a checkup quite easily. However, for a fiction writer, it doesn't really have all that much power. Nevertheless, I am now ready to give my card a number. I'm not going to focus too intently on the numbering system that I use because mine is a little bit non-standard. But the number that I gave to my card is such that it would come right after the existing card. And that is a concept that you need to have in a Zettelkasten. People worry a lot about the numbers when they start a new Antinet Zettelkasten. It's the factor that bothers people the most. Well, the funny thing is that I worried about it a lot too, but when you get your Zettelkasten rolling, you find out that it doesn't really make much difference at all what numbering system that you have. The only requirement is that you must have a numbering system, because you need to be able to create index entries, and you need to be able to go from your index entry to the card that you referenced. And you need to know from your numbering system, do I have to look forward or backward? How close am I to finding my card? That's the only real requirement. And you need a little bit of flexibility because you want to be able to put the new card next to any card in your system. And that means you need a little bit of flexibility. But the funny thing is, once you get rolling, you're going to invent systems that will give you the flexibility. So don't worry too much about the numbering system. Pick one, invent one, copy one. I've got 3 different numbering systems going in my Zettelkasten right now, and they live together quite well. It just is not the problem that people think it's going to be. So, no more thoughts about numbering, but I did give my card a number. And now I also have one more task that I have to do before I file my cards. And that is the final reflection. Down here in this card, I've had to go to 2 cards because my thoughts grew too long. But down here on my second card, I am going to give it, or I did give it, my feeling as to how these cards relate to one another. Because gradually your Antinet is going to tell a more and more coherent and complete story as you add more and more cards to it. And so part of the job of filing a card becomes telling why. Why did this card go there? What do these cards have in common? So with that final addition added, I'm now ready to take my cards and file them away in the drawers of my Antinet. So I hope that answers your question about how does this work with my Antinet. I do love my Antinet. I think it's just, it really gave quite a spark to my life. I started when I was 75 years old, and I'm 76 now, so it's been about a year and a half that I've had it going. And it has really given a boost to my years, and I only wish that I'd started it far, far younger. So besides talking about these character traits, which I enjoy so much, I hope you will also enjoy it if I occasionally drop in a little information about my Antinet. Thank you. Bye-bye.